All right. Welcome back to That's an Awful Take, episode 6 of the podcast. I'm so glad we've made it this far. I'm so glad we've got to do what I've gotten to do for so long. Obviously, keeping it going. It's episode 6. So, I'm Price Mancer, your host with the most, here to make the most out of your day. Hope everyone's having a great Christmas break. Just started for me. Got back from school, as you can see, back home in my room. So hope everyone finals went well for everyone. If you're not taking finals, hope everything's good. So I'm excited to get it going again today. Sorry for doing the show a couple days early, going on vacation in the next couple days. So we're going to get this show out, and we have a little important update for you all. So the Tap Pod has made it onto Instagram. So I just made an Instagram account for the podcast. So go ahead and give that a follow. It's is just TAAT Pod. So Tap Pod for short. So that's the official Instagram for That's an Awful Take. So I'll be posting some clips and highlights. A little more short form content, little updates and stuff. We'll talk about it more later. But yeah, just a couple of short form updates and all that whatnot. So just pretty cool stuff, just a little more short form. So hopefully boost the popularity of the show a little bit. And without further ado, just going to get into a little recap of some things. Some CFP and bowl matchups, the transfer portal, of course, NFL stuff, and our last segment, Real Spiel, which is of course our Q&A segment. So let's do a little recap. So obviously they had the award ceremonies over the last weekend. So, and most notably Travis Hunter winning the Heisman. Obviously, if you're a follower of the show, that's not really what I wanted to happen, but it ended up happening. And what can you do there? Ashton GT, of course, put up a historic season. There's no denying that, and so did Travis Hunter in a way. No one's really done what he's done in a while, but I don't think we should be discounting Gene T's stellar performance, especially putting up those kinds of numbers. Just really undeniable stuff. And you look at the Heisman Award, and it's kind of a award based on impact. And in my opinion, Ashton Gene T has more of an impact than Travis Hunter. And that's not to discount Travis Hunter at all. Travis Hunter is a great player. He's really good at what he does. But that being said, it's like, who does more for their team? If Boise State doesn't have Travis Hunter, do they go to the playoffs? Definitely not. If Colorado doesn't have Travis Hunter, do they do what they do? I mean, potentially. I really don't. Obviously, I just don't think in terms of impact, Hunter was as impactful as Gene T was. So, and in my opinion, if it's the most valuable player, it should be based on impact. So that's just kind of how I feel on the scenario. Obviously, we had Army versus Navy as well. It was a pretty interesting game. The great game for America there. The triple option. You just love to see it. Navy gets the win, upsets Army. So you really like to see that. Both of those teams have had a great year. So just a great all-around matchup, of course. And then, both of those teams are also bowling later on this week. So just a little interesting thing there. Shout out Navy for getting the dub there. And of course, we got some bowl matchups from the other day. Let me go through them real quick. So obviously, we had South Alabama get the win in that game we picked there. We had the Celebration Bowl as well. I'm pretty sure Jackson State won, which is who we picked to win. So let me make sure they won. I know, right? Let's see here. Yeah, Jackson State gets the win. Or wait, yeah, Jackson State, 28-7. So, just as predicted, right? And obviously we still have a couple more bowls to go, but those were the two that have been played so far. So to remind you guys, our bowl pick'ems, we've picked Memphis, James Madison, UNLV, and Georgia Southern to win their game. So Memphis is playing West Virginia, James Madison versus Western Kentucky, UNLV versus Cal, and Sam Houston versus Georgia Southern. Those are who we are going with. We went over that last week, but I realized we're going out of town, so we're going to, just a little reminder for you guys. So next up, we are going to go through some bowl matchups and whatnot. So we'll focus on the CFP first, though. So let's go ahead and get into that. So here we are. Obviously, we have our first matchup we're going to be going over, which is Indiana and Notre Dame. For Indiana, it's all about stopping the run. That's kind of been the thing that Notre Dame's been doing really well all season. Between, Jadarian Prince, is that his name? Let me see. Yeah, Jadarian Price, Jeremiah Love, and Riley Leonard all are great runners, and that makes that backfield just extremely dynamic. You can have two of them, you can have either or, and they're still going to put up crazy numbers, which, that's just a thing that Indiana's going to have to stop here if they want to win this football game. I mean, you see it in the NIU game. That's kind of the one thing that NIU did well, is forced Notre Dame to pass the ball. I think if you're Indiana, you're Kurt Cignetti here. You got to force Notre Dame to pass the ball. Riley Leonard, not the best passer, obviously. They don't really use him that much as a passer. But if you're Indiana, you want to get the pass going. Forcing Notre Dame to throw the ball, I think, is a key if Indiana wants to get a chance at winning this game. It's for Indiana, you need to get Curtis Rourke to throw the ball good. Get the pass going, get Curtis Rourke heated up. Obviously, Curtis Rourke is a great passer. I think he's probably one of the best quarterbacks in college football right now. I would say top 10. And that's just the key to victory, I think, for Indiana, is stopping the run and get Curtis Rourke going on the offensive side of the ball. If you get those two factors going, I think that Indiana could win that football game. But am I saying that's going to happen at 8 p.m. in South Bend? I don't really think so. I think Notre Dame will definitely get the win here. Offense is just way too dynamic, and it's just the keys for Notre Dame is just to dominate with the run with Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price and Riley Leonard. So I have Notre Dame winning this one. We'll see how that game goes. And next game we have is SMU and Penn State. And honestly, I think this game has a lot more upset potential than people think. Really, I mean, if you look at the tape and the stats and whatnot for SMU, SMU really has the strengths on defense that kind of counter Penn State's whole offense, right? So Penn State, their whole offense, it's running with Nick Singleton and the other running back, I forget his name. Let me take a look real quick. I can figure that out for us real quick. Yeah, Kentron Allen. So it's all about stopping three guys. So Nick Singleton, Kentron Allen, and Tyler Warren kind of stole the Mackey Award, in my opinion. That's something we can get into later on. But anyways, for SMU did a really good job against Clemson, at least with stopping the run and stopping the pass to the tight end. They limited Jake Barringstool to, I think, like 40 yards, which is great for a high-impact player like Barringstool. But it's all about stopping the run. And, Phil Maffa is definitely not Singleton or Kentron Allen. But I think that if SMU can really stop those guys, they definitely have a big chance of winning. Putting Drew Aller in uncomfortable situations, forcing him to throw the ball. I mean, you saw it against Oregon with the 2 turnovers he threw. But, yeah, I think the key for SMU is definitely just stopping those 2 guys. And if you stop those 3 guys, I think you're able to put up a good stop or a good battle against Penn State. And obviously, this is a super hard environment for SMU to go in and win. State College, obviously, is a crazy environment, but it's a noon game. So maybe SMU can go up there and get the win. It's going to be cold, way colder than Texas. That is one of I think one of the more interesting underlying factors is you have all these teams that are used to playing, or at least with SMU, they're used to playing in the heat, getting up north and playing in the cold. I think it's going to be like 20 degrees. I think that's definitely something that needs to be considered. But, Brashard Smith and Gavin Jennings have been a great backfield duo. So we'll see how it goes. I honestly could see SMU pulling out the upset here. Could be really interesting, but, we'll see how it goes. Next up, we got... Oh, doesn't have it selected. My bad, guys. My bad. Let me pull it up real quick. So, next up, obviously, we have Clemson and Texas. So I think really this is going to be the best game of all of the first round of the CFP. Clemson, kind of like an underrated team in my opinion. I mean, yeah, they have the 3 losses, but I don't think that 3 losses should discount them. I think they are a good team, and they have a lot of strengths that really puts them in a good spot in this CFP, in my opinion. So, for instance, we have Clemson and Texas. Clemson, great football recently. Klubnik's been hot, and if you watch Klubnik, he's a pretty streaky guy. I mean, you've seen it this season, you saw it last season, but I think Klubnik is really a streaky guy. He's been pretty good all season, all things considered, if you look at the stats. But, last week he played a great game against SMU, no turnovers. And this week, I think if he could play the same kind of ball game, they're definitely in the conversation to win the football game. So, sorry. So, it's just all about, the offense for Clemson staying hot. Obviously, they weren't able to get Maffa going on the ground, but through the air, they were dominant. And the thing with Clemson is that they have the best front seven in football right now. I mean, that is really unstoppable, led by Peter Woods over there. Shout out Peter Woods. But it's just like that defensive line and those linebackers are truly some of the best in football, and that could really mess things up for Texas. You saw it in when Texas played Georgia. Obviously Texas' only 2 losses were against Georgia, and the main reason for those losses, I think, is the defense for Georgia. You're able to force pressure on McQuinn Ewers or Arch Manning, and it causes mistakes. And obviously, that front seven for Georgia was able to limit the run. They were able to limit Wisner to, I think, only 50 yards on the ground when he just came off of a game where he had 180. And I think it's all about, creating pressure up front against this Texas team. And really, this Texas O-line who hasn't really played anyone except for that Georgia team, and you see what happened when they played that Georgia team. So, I think that front seven for Clemson could really get it going against Texas. And, Georgia's proven you can win in Austin. Who's to say Clemson can't do it either? Obviously, it's all about creating pressure with that front seven. I think the focal point of Clemson winning this game, or even having the potential to win this game, is how much pressure they create up front. Putting Ewers in uncomfortable situations, which we saw against Georgia. Throwing picks and fumbling the ball away. So it really could be the difference. Obviously stopping Wisner on the ground really limits Texas's offense. And I mean, for Clemson as well, I think they kind of really need to focus on being more dynamic as a team. Against SMU, they threw the ball a lot, and because they weren't able to get it going on the ground. But I think if you're Clemson, you really can't solely focus on the pass. You got to get the run going against this Clemson team. Obviously, the Texas DBs are a lot better than the SMU DBs, so I don't think there will be as much over-the-top plays as there were in the SMU game. But if they can get that dynamic offense going with Maffa on the ground, I think it could be a real difference maker. I mean, it could make this game really close and more close than Texas wants it to be. But overall, I do think Texas will get the win. But I wouldn't be surprised if this game is super close or came down to the wire, or if Clemson even came out with a win. So take a sip of water real quick all right. So next up, also a really good game. I forgot to open it, but we're going to open it right now. So, oh wait, that's the wrong one. Whoopsie daisies. Here we go. Well, as you can see, we're kind of scrambling here. But anyways, we have Tennessee versus Ohio State. Now, this is also, I mean, all of the first round matchups really are going to be great games, and this one included. So, obviously, it's a night game in Columbus at the Shoe. It's going to be, I think, a crazy environment, to say the least. Obviously, Ohio State, they're sore from the last loss to Michigan at the end of the regular season. A lot of crazy things happened in that game with Michigan and the flag planting and all the fights. And I think that's kind of going to create maybe a fight in this team, something real nitty gritty for the Buckeyes. But it's like both teams have had their up and downs this season. Obviously, the loss to Michigan last game, and then Tennessee with some rough losses to Arkansas. But it's all about, the Ohio State O-line is dealing with a lot of injuries right now. I don't know if you guys know. I think the center is hurt. and he won the award for best center. And with that O-line injuries happening, obviously it makes the running game a lot harder. And you saw that against Michigan. The running game was not as dominant as it usually is with Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson. But you know, and that's not to discount Will Howard's play at all. You know, Will Howard is a good quarterback, and he's shown that he can be a good quarterback, whether that was at Kansas State or Ohio State. You know, obviously we've seen all the jump balls of Jeremiah Smith. He's got a Mecca Igbuka. He has these guys he can throw it to, and it's just a matter of can Will Howard do it. You know, he has this O line that is, you know, it's not going to be, you know, the Ohio State best that they could send out, and that's due to injuries, but can Will Howard do it? Can Will Howard use his legs to buy himself time to make throws down the field? You know, can he do that kind of things? And obviously we've seen it, but against this Tennessee defense, it's going to be interesting. You know, Tennessee, they have a great front four led by James Pierce Jr. James Pierce Jr. obviously a projected top 5 pick probably, and that's kind of the big thing for Tennessee is can Tennessee's D line beat past this kind of broken Ohio State O line, and you know, I think that kind of all relies on how good Will Howard can move, how he can stay in the pocket and have this pocket vision, and find his receivers. So we'll see how that will go. Obviously, there's more that has to be talked about for Tennessee as well, though. You know, because Tennessee, you know, can they get it going? You know, we've seen Tennessee in these blowout matches, these blowout, you know, these big blowout wins against like teams like UTEP or Kent State or whatever, and obviously, I mean, it's clicking on all cylinders. You got Dylan Sampson going on the ground, Nico Amaleva throwing it through the air, looking great. You know, you have the wide receiver Thornton, and you have a couple other guys for Tennessee that are really difference makers. And but you look in the big games, you know, you don't really see them all put it together like they do in the blowouts. You know, and that's the big thing. Like obviously, Tennessee's lost to Georgia. They put up 10 points unanswered, and then it just kind of dissipated. The offense did for Tennessee. And I mean, even in games like the Alabama game or Kentucky or Arkansas, they really don't get it going. You know, in that Vanderbilt game a couple weeks ago, they did get it going, and you know, obviously Vanderbilt isn't the caliber of team as an Alabama, Ohio State, or a Georgia. But it'll be interesting to see if Heupel can put it all together, and I think that's the big thing. Obviously, you want to run Dylan Sampson to open up the passing lanes for Nico, but you know that doesn't really happen in these big games. What we've seen from Tennessee at least, and it's just a matter of you know, putting it together, and you know, we haven't seen them put it together like that in a big game. So you know, are they going to go up north to Columbus, Ohio, and do that in the cold weather? In a hostile environment? In my opinion, not really. So I can see Ohio State winning this game, maybe pretty handedly, honestly, but we'll see how it goes. It might be a little back and forth battle. So we're going to take a pop over into chat real quick, see if anyone's saying anything. Franklin getting fired if he's losing to SMU, that's true. Gang, what's up, y'all? Make your bed. Yeah, I will, Mom, don't worry. But yeah, so that's kind of how we feel about the CFP matchups here. Next, we're going to go into some bowl game predictions and whatnot. So, obviously, we have a couple of bowls to go through, not a lot. Let's see, go to where we left off. So, we're going to keep going until next Thursday, so that's when our next show will be, maybe sooner. So, I'll do a small one to keep you guys updated on what's been happening around college football and whatnot. But yeah, let's keep it going. So we got Ohio and Jacksonville State and the Cure Bowl in Orlando, Florida. I think that Ohio is going to get the win here. Obviously, Ohio is they're really good. If you guys don't know, great MAC team. You know, one of the best, in fact. But I think Ohio gets the win against Jacksonville State. Jacksonville State's had a lot of transfers hit the portal here recently, including their star safety. I think that you know, Ohio's going to get the win here. Next up, Florida Tulane. It's going to be Florida by a lot. Obviously, Mensa hit the portals and going to Duke now. Ty Thompson also hit the portal, the backup quarterback for Tulane. So it might be a pretty rough day for Tulane in the Gasparilla Bowl. Give me Florida to win that one. Obviously, we went through these games. If you want to know what I'm going Notre Dame, SMU, Texas, Ohio State. Next up, we got UTSA and Coastal Carolina in the Myrtle Beach Bowl. So pretty much a home game for Coastal Carolina, right? But UTSA is heavily favored, and for a good reason, because Coastal Carolina's whole team, not really whole team, but a lot of their skill position players have hit the portal this year, or in this recent cycle. So I'm going to have to go with UTSA, even though it is basically a home game. Next up, NIU and Fresno State. Give me NIU. This game's relatively unimportant, famous Idaho Potato Bowl. But yeah, give me NIU. They've been they finished the year pretty rough in the MAC, but so is Fresno State in the Mountain West. So give me NIU. Next up, we got South Florida and San Jose State. San Jose State has had a great offense all year, and they've had a few guys hit the transfer portal, but I think it's more of a coaching thing there in the Hawaii Bowl. So give me San Jose State. They're not going to be traveling all the way from Florida to Hawaii, just California to Hawaii. So give me San Jose State to win that one. I like that. Next, and these are the last three games we're going to go over for the bowl matchups. So if you have any questions for me, get them ready. Pitt and Toledo. This is kind of a pretty rough draw for Toledo, honestly. But give me Pitt. I think Nate Yarnell should be playing in that game, but they've played pretty good football against good teams. So give me Pitt to beat Toledo. Obviously, we got Rutgers at Kansas State. I don't know why I said at, but Rutgers, Kansas State. Kansas State, obviously Avery Johnson, DJ Giddens should be playing. Maybe not Giddens, but Avery Johnson should be playing. So, I think Kansas State can earn a win there. Maybe Rutgers surprises me. Always bet Rutgers money line. If you know, you know. But in the 68 Ventures Bowl, last one we're going to go over, we got Arkansas State and Bowling Green. Obviously a pretty unimportant bowl game, but give me Bowling Green. Hopefully our guy Harold Fannin will be playing. The guy who should have won the Mackey. But yeah, that's who we're going with there. Next, we're gonna pop over to chat. We got a lot to talk about in the portal here coming up, so we're just gonna go through it. Thoughts on Akron Zips football season? Oh man, what are we doing, Akron? What are we doing, Akron football? I mean, at least we got the win against Kent State, but I think they went 3-9. I think that sounds right. But yeah, pretty rough. And they blew out Kent State. So I guess they win the battle for the wagon wheel. But Zips got to pick it up, right? You got to contend for those MAC championships with the Ohio's, the Miami of Ohio's of the world. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, let's get on to the portal. So if you guys don't know, the portal is probably my favorite part of college football right now, at least. This is kind of the list of the updates today. So first, I think we're going to go through the specific positions. So let's do that. So big names have entered the portal since I last talked to you guys. So first off, we got John Mateer. So if you guys don't know who John Mateer is, you should. John Mateer was a great quarterback for Washington State this season, and really kind of the big reason why their offense was so good this season. John Mateer can air that ball out, and his name was kind of buzzing around the portal. Is he going to enter? Is he not going to enter? And he does. But, Mateer, great quarterback, can put great zip on the ball, can find the open guys. Really, really a good quarterback. And you look at Washington State, you're going from, Cam Ward last season to now Mateer. Mateer's honestly looked maybe, obviously not an upgrade, but almost just as good as Cam Ward did last year. So that's really great for Mateer. And I think the big reason why he entered the portal is because Washington State's offensive coordinator just accepted, or maybe head coach, something like that, just accepted the offensive coordinator job at Oklahoma. So it is being heavily predicted, from what I've heard, from what I've seen, that John Mateer will be in Oklahoma sooner. So we'll see how that goes. I'm pretty sure he will go to Oklahoma. I don't really know where else he would go. Obviously, he could fit a lot of teams, but I have my prediction as long as a lot of the experts are saying that Mateer will be at Oklahoma, so that makes sense. Luke Cromenhook, obviously, I talked about him last week. I'm pretty sure. I had said I'm not really sure how he's going to go. Obviously, one of his big things and one of his reasons for for hitting the portal in Florida State or from Florida State is wanting to be developed, and then he goes to Mississippi State. Don't really know about the quarterback development at Mississippi State. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but the last time I heard of a quarterback from Mississippi State, it was Dak Prescott and maybe Nick Fitzgerald. If you know, you know. But yeah, Cromenhook to Mississippi State. Jeff Lebby was willing to break the pocketbook, whip out a Millie Billy. So yeah, Cromenhook to Mississippi State. I don't really know how I feel about the move just yet. I got to see what's going on. Obviously Mississippi State has Blake Shapen still, and obviously MVB Martin Van Buren only got in the game because Shapen got hurt and ended his season. So we'll see if Shapen is a starter next year over Cromenhook, or if Cromenhook's going to start. Obviously Blake Shapen is a veteran guy that Cromenhook can learn under, but we'll see how that goes for Luke Cromenhook. Maybe I think he takes a year to develop here. At least it would be smart, in my opinion, if I was Jeff Lebby. But obviously, you got money tied in now. You're paying $1 million for a guy to sit on your bench, and not a lot of teams want to do that. Excuse me. So yeah. Next update we got. Actually, there's no update really. I haven't heard anything from Fernando Mendoza, or if there's anything going on there. Obviously, his teams, we talked about it last week, were like Georgia, Indiana, Wisconsin, and I think low-key Mississippi State. I don't remember. I can look real quick. UCLA. Sorry. Yeah. UGA, Indiana, UCLA, and Wisconsin. I think it's still Indiana. I think Indiana is going to be the move for Fernando Mendoza. Next up, we got Malik Murphy. So obviously the two teams that were kind of tied to him to start were Miami and Auburn. And obviously we'll talk about Auburn a little later on down this list, but it's not going to be Auburn. I can tell you guys that. But so maybe it's Miami. He hasn't scheduled a visit with Miami yet, to my knowledge, but he did have a visit with Kentucky yesterday, I believe. So maybe Malik Murphy goes to Kentucky. Obviously, Kentucky brought in Brock Vandagriff last season. Became really disappointed. Even benched him. They had a couple guys in and out. I'm forgetting his name, but yeah. So Malik Murphy, could he fit at Kentucky? Definitely. Is there a better fit at Miami? In my opinion, yes. So if Malik Murphy does get the visit to Miami, if he gets recruited by Miami, I think he will go to Miami. But for now, be on the lookout for a team like Kentucky to do it. We talked about Weigman last week. I love that move. Next up, Miller Moss. So if you guys don't know, I called that one. So 2 weeks ago, Miller Moss entered the portal. Maybe it's 3 weeks ago at this point, but Miller Moss entered the portal. I talked about it. I said, listen, I like Miller Moss as a quarterback. Obviously got benched, had a pretty rough season last year at USC. I was pretty high on him last season too, or I guess this season. But the teams came out. It was like Mizzou, Indiana, Louisville, and I was sitting here. It's just Miller Moss. It's just a great fit on the spread offense over there at Louisville. I think that Miller Moss. I was like, I could really see him out of Louisville. Obviously, the next week he takes 2 visits to Missouri and Louisville, and ends up picking Louisville. So let's go, Awful Take Podcast. We're getting it done, and I'm happy that Miller Moss goes to a school like Louisville. I think the fit is really there. So yeah, obviously we got Darian Minza to Duke. Love what Mike Elko's building down there. Next up, we got Jackson Arnold. So Jackson Arnold obviously leaves Oklahoma, goes to Auburn, and I know that NIL Auburn paid a lot of money to Jackson Arnold for him to come to Auburn. So I think it was 2.5 to 3 million was the NIL evaluation on Jackson Arnold, which is insane. I really like Jackson Arnold. I was really high on him this season. Results were not as high as what I was saying they were going to be, but that's okay. And obviously Jackson Arnold got benched at one point, came back, looked pretty decent running the football. Kind of leaves a lot to desire to be passing, but I think he if he was to do it now, this is the school to do it. Obviously, you have weapons in Cam Coleman and Keandre Lambert-Smith and all those guys down in Auburn. So I think Jackson Arnold really makes a difference. Could really take a leap. Kind of the leap we were expecting last year or this season, but we didn't really get for him. So I really like the move to Auburn. I think it makes sense. I'm a big Jackson Arnold believer, so obviously I'm going to like it. Anyways, Walker White, kind of really an unimportant transfer in my opinion. I think he's going to go somewhere and sit the bench unless he obviously transfers to a smaller school, but I don't think that's realistic for him. I think he's going to stay in the Power 4 and sit behind somebody. Didn't play at all, I think, this season. But next up, we got Aaron Noland, of course. Entered his name into the portal a couple days ago. Standout guy from Langston Hughes down here in Georgia. So shout out Aaron Noland. I'm very curious to see where he goes. Obviously, he's a true freshman at Ohio State. He's sitting behind Will Howard, Devin Brown, and the other guy they brought in the recruiting cycle last year. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where he goes. I don't think he would go anywhere to start. At least I hope not. Obviously, he has never seen the field, and I think he should have his red shirt. So I think he does still have the 4 years of eligibility, maybe 3. But I think it's similar to a Walker White kind of deal where he kind of sits somewhere and doesn't see the field much this season. Could become like a breakout guy. So we'll see how it goes for Noland. Obviously, coming from a great team like Ohio State. So we'll see how that goes. Next up, we got Caden Salter. Haven't heard an update about him. Obviously, still tied to the 4 teams as last week, which were, let me bring them up real quick, Syracuse, Colorado, and Florida State. Sorry, 3 teams. Obviously, I don't think it's going to be Florida State this time, but I do think it's going to be, I could see a Syracuse or a Colorado. So we'll see if it goes between those 2 teams. Next up, we got Michael Van Buren. So I honestly love this move for MVP. Obviously, you were kind of rushed into action at Mississippi State. Mississippi State has been a name in the portal trying to find a quarterback, whether it was, obviously Jackson Arnold was tied to him a lot. Just a lot of other guys tied to going to Mississippi State. So obviously you hear that noise. You're like, maybe I should get out of here. So MVB hits the portal and goes to LSU, which I like the move, in my opinion. I think Michael Van Buren, he's a great quarterback, but he just doesn't quite have it yet, obviously. Rushing at action as a true freshman. And next he gets in the portal, goes to an LSU, and can learn from a guy like Garrett Nussmeier, someone who can air the ball out. And so maybe he learns a lot. He develops under Brian Kelly and Garrett Nussmeier. So hopefully that's the case for Michael Van Buren. And honestly, a great replacement, because LSU was supposed to land Bryce Underwood until a couple weeks ago when he flipped to Michigan. So I think this is a good step in the future, especially for LSU. You get Nussmeier for 1 more year, I believe. So MVB, come in, play that backup role, hopefully make some impacts. Let's keep going. If there's any particular quarterbacks I want to talk about. Yes, there's a couple. So, Billy Edwards Jr. transfers to Wisconsin. I think he starts there. Billy Edwards Jr. was not a bad quarterback at all for Maryland this year. Obviously, had played some pretty rough games. But Billy Edwards Jr. is a very athletic quarterback, very tall, can get over the pile, can move around with his legs a little bit, and can throw a pretty good ball. That's the main thing for him, is just kind of developing that. And I think a fit like Wisconsin makes a lot of sense for a guy like Billy Edwards Jr. So I like the move for Billy Edwards Jr. there. Next up, we got Chandler Morris going to Virginia. I think, honestly, he starts at Virginia as well. Obviously, they got Daniel Kalen, I think is how you say it, the true freshman from Nebraska. But I think Chandler Morris, he's a proven guy. He's done his duty. He's played Power 4 football before with TCU and one other team. I forget what it is. It might have been like Texas Tech or something. But takes a step down in competition and balls out at North Texas. So I really like the move for Chandler Morris, honestly, going to a low-end Power 4 school like Virginia and hopefully continuing to make a name for yourself. Obviously, Colin Treya from Virginia moves out, but I think Morris really could make a difference here. Next up, we're going to talk about is Ashton Daniels. So obviously Jackson Arnold transfers in, and then Ashton Daniels transfers in as well. And in my opinion, this is just Ashton Daniels. He's just going to the bench at this point. I don't think Daniels, and I think Daniels is a great quarterback, and really did well again in Syracuse, but I don't see him playing over Jackson Arnold in any way, shape, or form. So I think this is a pretty rough move to just kind of just transfer and sit on the bench, maybe. So eh, not my favorite move of the portal at all. Let me take a sip of water real. Yeah, there. Let me see if there's any more quarterback moves. Haven't heard anything from like Preston Stone or Deshaun Purdy. Of course, Brian for Minnesota. We talked about that last week. Danny O'Neil, another move that doesn't make sense for me at all. Obviously, going to Wisconsin. Billy Edwards Jr. is at Wisconsin and is going to start over Danny O'Neil. Danny O'Neil. They were really building something down in San Diego State that I don't think people realize is that San Diego State was honestly building a foundation to have a really good Group of Five program. Danny O'Neil got to start as a true freshman down there and played really well, but he's trying to parlay that into a move to the Power Four. I don't see that working out for him. DeQuan Finn hit the portal. I think he should go back to the MAC. To be honest, he should have never left Toledo. In my opinion, he had nowhere. He did not deserve to be a Power Four starter at all. So I think he could use a step down in competition. Obviously, we got Zach Calzada, the journeyman. Honestly, I think Texas A&M, Mississippi State, something like that. Goes to Incarnate Word, balls out, and is now in the portal again. I think he goes to a Group of Five school somewhere, maybe in the Sun Belt, maybe like a Southern Miss kind of team, or Arkansas State something. Well, Arkansas State has a good quarterback. Let me stop saying that, but like maybe a Marshall or something, North Texas maybe. But yeah, I don't think that happens. Well, I guess Nate Yarnell is not going to be starting for Pitt in the bowl game, so keep that in mind. But I think Pitt still has it. Let's see if there's any more names that I am looking for. If not, we can go back to chat. I was thinking there was one more. Alex Orgy, kind of an unimportant name. But, yeah. Oh, here it is. TJ Finley. TJ Finley. Yeah, journeyman. I mean, literally. Kind of like JT Daniels in a way, He's at LSU. And then he was at Oklahoma, was it? And then, I don't think it was Oklahoma. I don't remember where he went. Then Texas State, Western Kentucky is now at Tulane. Going to be the starter at Tulane, I assume, with Ty Thompson and Darian Mensah gone. So, yeah, I think, I honestly, I don't hate the move for TJ Finley. He's a known gunslinger. So I like the move for TJ Finley there. So those are the quarterbacks. We'll take a quick peek at chat here, see if chat's saying anything. Most underrated conference in college. Honestly, like the Mountain West. Low key. If we're talking Power 4, I think the most underrated conference is the Big 12. I think the Big 12 is obviously it's not going to compete with the Big 10 and the SEC, but it's definitely better than the ACC in my opinion. Big 12 has a lot of good teams and a lot of competition between those teams. Obviously, you got teams that were really underrated in my opinion, like a Baylor or a TCU or Arizona State or a West Virginia, all being kind of like mid-pack teams in that conference, except for obviously Arizona State. But you have your heavy hitters like your Colorado or your Oklahoma. Well, not really Oklahoma State this season, but your BYU, your Kansas State, Texas Tech. I think there's a lot of underrated teams in that conference and a lot of teams that make big impacts that people don't really see. And I think top to bottom is one of the better conferences in college football. So, yeah, that's kind of how I feel about that. Group of Five, I would say most underrated Group of Five conference is probably, man, that's hard to say because it's like what's truly underrated. But I think the Mountain West is the best Group of Five conference in football. Obviously, the American has some good teams between Tulane, Memphis, Army, Navy. Those are all teams that have been ranked this season. But I think the most underrated conference in the group of five, in my opinion, is probably the Mountain West. Mountain West has really good teams from, UNLV is a great team. San Diego State's building something. San Jose State was a really good team this year. Fresno State has the potential to be a really good team in the future. And, teams like New Mexico, there's pretty good teams down there. So, yeah, we'll keep going with the wide receivers now. Oh, that's running backs. Oh, we'll do running backs instead. So obviously the big name that everyone heard this season or this past weekend was Justice Haynes hit the portal, the running back for Alabama. Obviously, got a lot of carries. Was kind of that power guy for Alabama, that bruiser, that nitty gritty kind of guy. So hits the portal, just like a lot of Alabama players this season or this portal cycle, which we've seen is so many Alabama players hitting the portal, which is very interesting to say the least, especially for Kalen DeBoer. I feel like under Saban there weren't nearly as many transfers. Obviously, the portal this season is already so much different than it was last season. So we'll have to see it in terms of volume of transfers. We'll see. But Justice Haynes, he's been tied to Big Ten schools. So Michigan and Ohio State were the two big ones, I believe. So I could see a team like Ohio State taking him, obviously. Judkins is a senior. Travion Henderson's a senior. So maybe Justice Haynes comes in there. Obviously, Michigan could use some help on the ground as well. Next up, we got Wayshawn Parker, which I really like Wayshawn Parker. I think Wayshawn Parker, if you don't know, like that whole Washington State team was honestly really good down there in Kalamazoo. Or that is Western Michigan. But, wherever they play football in Washington State. But, I forget what it's called, but they got a really good. They have great players down there, and Wayshawn Parker is one of them. And he kind of helped open up the game for Mateer. Obviously, not to discount Mateer's skill, but yeah, Wayshawn Parker is a good name to know in the portal. I really like him. I think he will make an impact wherever he goes. So Wayshawn Parker for you there. In my opinion, not as good as Fluff Bothwell. Fluff Bothwell is a great player and is probably going to start wherever he goes. At least he should. Talked about Joyner last week. Looked great. Roman Hemby. I think Roman Hemby, obviously, you see the 3 stars there. He's better than that. Roman Hemby's a good running back. The starter for Maryland all around and was a great guy for him. So I honestly really like Hemby to go to, honestly, a lot of different schools. He could make a difference at a lot of schools, in my opinion. If he were to go to like a Big 12 or an ACC, I think he's an immediate starter. Obviously at Maryland in the Big 10, kind of a rough draw there. One of the not really the premier Maryland or Big 10 teams, but I think wherever Hemby lands, teams with a struggling running back room, maybe like a Colorado or something like that, I think Hemby makes a really good impact there. So I like Hemby a lot. He was used a lot in the past. He's a great runner. So we'll see where he goes. I really like Hemby. I wish I had more information on him, on where he could potentially go. But, obviously I don't. Next guy we're going to talk about is A.J. Turner. So obviously we talked about A.J. Turner a lot in previous episodes. That he's a stud, really. He's a great running back for Marshall. And it's kind of rough that he really didn't get over 10 carries a game, which is something random, but Marshall ran a lot of different guys at running back between Ethan Payne and A.J. Turner and Antoine Roberts there. But A.J. Turner was the real star back there. He led all of college football in yards per carry. And is parlaying that into going to Minnesota. But the weird thing about Minnesota is you look at Minnesota, obviously we have A.J. Turner here. We scroll down a little bit more, we got Cole Cabana here. And we scroll down a little bit more, and we have Cameron Davis. So Minnesota just picks up 3 running backs in the portal, and last year they picked up, I think, 2 or 3 as well. But the main issue with that is Minnesota has this running back called Darius Taylor, or named Darius Taylor. What did I say called? But yeah, they have this running back named Darius Taylor, and he's great. He's a great running back, and he led them in carries and rushes and all that, all the statistics for Minnesota. And he is really a really good running back, kind of one of the reasons why they were as good as they were this season. If you guys don't know, I think Minnesota was a very underrated team. The record really didn't tell the whole truth for that team, obviously, but you got three guys to sit behind Darius Taylor. And I think out of the three, between A.J. Turner, Cameron Davis, and Cole Cabana, A.J. Turner is the one that's going to make the most impact. But, I just, how much is that impact with Darius Taylor, who's only a sophomore and is probably going to be the starter again next year? He's definitely going to be the starter next year. So what are you going to do there? Next up, how is Minnesota doing it? That's the real question. How are they bringing all these running backs year in and year out? Next up, we got Darrell Robinson. So Robinson, pretty good running back for UConn. Split some time in the backfield, but I think got over 1,000 yards, and is taking that and going to Auburn. But obviously, Auburn has what's his name? Wow, I'm forgetting his name. But if anyone in chat knows, let me know. But yeah, Darrell Robinson goes to Auburn to ride the bench pretty much. Obviously, you saw it with Brian Battie last year. Kind of did the same thing from a lower tier school, group of five school, moves up and tries to go to Auburn and just doesn't see the field. And obviously, I think that's the same thing here. Kawan, I think it's Kawan Lacey. I don't think it's really going to be an impactful transfer for Ole Miss. He might see the field, but I'm not very familiar with the Ole Miss running back room right now, if I'm being real. Sorry, but maybe the move is something interesting. Eli Sanders still hasn't committed to Utah yet, so maybe he won't go to Utah, but we'll see. I think there's definitely a strong chance that he does. Next up is Jalen Glover to UNLV. Obviously, Dan Mullen's first pickup for UNLV. If you guys don't know, Dan Mullen is now the head coach at UNLV after I forget his name. Of course, I always forget names on here, but homeboy goes to Purdue. So yeah, Dan Mullen picks up Jalen Glover, and Jalen Glover is a really good running back. But the issue with Jalen Glover is staying healthy, and hopefully he does that at UNLV. When he's on the field, he's great. So we'll see how that goes for UNLV. I hope he stays on the field, stays healthy, and I think he'd be a very impactful player for good old UNLV down there. Of course, we got Ismail Mahdi. I think he's top 5 in transfer portal right now for running backs. Kanye Udo, who is the star running back for Army, looked really good this season. Obviously, hitting the portal, I think he goes to a pretty decent team, low tier group of 4 team probably, or power 4 team probably. And yeah, I think he makes an impact wherever he goes if he keeps his options realistic. Let's keep that in mind. Let's see, is there any other names that I wanted to talk about? I don't think so. The big thing for the past couple days has been the wide receivers. So we'll get into the wide receivers now. Obviously, the show, we are already at 6:50. I've already been talking for 50 minutes. Unbelievable. But we're going to keep it rolling, obviously, however long it takes. First of all, Eric Singleton Jr. So really tied for, I was really, as a Georgia fan, I was really rooting for him to go to Georgia, but he just released his top 6 schools, and Georgia was not one of them, which is pretty unfortunate. Crystal ball to Ole Miss. I think he goes to Ole Miss, obviously. Just a great slot receiver. I mean, probably the best receiver in this in this portal class. So that's going to be a great get for Lane Kiffin and the SIP. Next up, Zachariah Branch, obviously the speedster. Kind of really an underwhelming season in my opinion this season at USC. Obviously, he's this super speedy gadget guy, but other than kickoffs and deep bombs, we haven't really seen much from him yet. And obviously, he enters his name into the portal. Maybe he's not being used right. Maybe Miller Moss or Mayava aren't able to get the ball to him. So I'm curious to see if he goes somewhere with a good quarterback, if he can make a bigger impact than what we saw the past 2 seasons. Obviously, he's a freshman 2 seasons ago, but last season obviously wasn't that impactful. So we'll see where Zachariah Branch goes. Hopefully a good team, but maybe he needs to be more realistic about his options, take a step down in competition. We'll see how it goes. Next, we got Deuce Robinson. We've already talked about Dan Key. Still don't know where Nick Anderson is going. Maybe he follows Jackson Arnold to Auburn. We will see. Haven't heard anything from Conception. Talked about Micah Hudson, Barry Brown, of course. Horatio Fields, standout wide receiver for Wake Forest, going to Duke, it looks like. We'll see how that goes. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. The crystal balls are pretty accurate, though, so if not, that's a great pickup for Mike Elko and the boys. Horatio Fields, really a standout wide receiver for Wake Forest, made a big impact for that team on, what was a less impactful team. But, yeah, Kevin Coleman to Mizzou. Like that pickup, obviously replaces a need with Luther Burden gone. Obviously, you still have Theo Weiss, who is a great receiver at Missouri, pretty underrated in my opinion. But a good move for Kevin Coleman. Mario Craver to Texas A&M. Mario Craver was a guy who kind of struggled to see the field at Mississippi State, so I don't really understand the move to Texas A&M at all. I don't think he really makes an impact there. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. Chase Sowell from ECU to Iowa State. He was actually a great receiver for ECU, so we love the move to Iowa State, teaming up with Rocco Beck. Rocco Beck's a quarterback. I think Chase Sowell could make a really good impact. Next up is another guy I talked about last week that I thought was going to make a great impact on whatever team he went to, is Deshaun Stribling. Goes down to the SIP. So I really like that move for Ole Miss. Obviously, Ole Miss is a portal hunting team. They do a pretty good job of bringing in recruits. Obviously, you got Prince Will Umalayan or whatever, the brother of Prince Lee. Got him to come from Nebraska, and they get Deshaun Stribling and maybe even Eric Singleton. So, that receiving room is going to be loaded next year with Stribling. I really like Stribling a lot as a deep threat guy from Oklahoma State. Really, him and Presley work great together, Brendan Presley and Deshaun Stribling. So both of them are true ones. I think Ole Miss really got a good one here. Reggie Virgil, Miami of Ohio, wide receiver, goes to Texas Tech. Texas Tech has a really deep receiving room. We'll see if he makes an impact there. Isaiah Hunter, still obviously haven't heard anything there. Kobe Prentice to Baylor. Obviously, I talked about this last week. Kobe Prentice hasn't been able to see the field that much on Alabama at all in his past 2 years. And, realistically, I don't think he, obviously doesn't deserve to go to a top half Power 4 school. I'm glad he was realistic about his options. Baylor, I think, is a good move for him. We'll see if he gets on the field. Hopefully he does. But, if he doesn't get on the field here, it's going to be really concerning for Kobe Prentice fans, I guess. But, yeah, Kobe Prentice goes to Baylor. I like the move to an extent. We'll see how much of an impact he makes. Luke Wysong here. I think I forgot to talk about him last week, but goes to Arizona. That's a great move for him. Luke Wysong was a great receiver for New Mexico last year. A great option for Devin Dampier. So, I really like Wysong to Arizona. I think he's going to be really good there. Kyron Hudson obviously goes to Penn State. I don't know how much of a impact he makes. Obviously, kind of reminds me of the Julian Fleming transfer from last year for Penn State. Obviously, Julian Fleming didn't see the field that much. For Penn State this year until the end. So, maybe Kyron Hudson. I think it's kind of the same path for him there. Donovan McCulley, really good wide receiver for Indiana, wide receiver for Indiana, goes to Michigan. Joseph Manjack. So this is one of the names I actually really wanted to talk about today. So Joseph Manjack, kind of the one guy on Houston who was really good last year, or this season. I keep saying last season, this season, same thing. So really good for Houston. Makes it to TCU. I really like the move for TCU and Joseph Manjack. I think Joseph Manjack will make a great impact on TCU. Obviously, you have Josh Hoover there at TCU with him. So Hoover, only a sophomore, going to be a junior next year, gets a certified guy like Manjack to throw it to. So I really like that move for Manjack. I like it for TCU. I think that's a great impactful move in the Big 12 there. Xavier Townsend, Iowa State. I don't really think he sees the field. Crenshaw McCray to Michigan State. So Kent State, the worst team in college football last year. They had one bright spot on offense, and that was Crenshaw McCray. He had to play with 4 different quarterbacks this year. But he's a really good wide receiver. Very underrated. obviously not a lot of people have heard of him, but I think he makes a great impact on Michigan State. I think he could play with the bigs, and I think having a guy like him on a low tier Power 4 school could really be good for Michigan State and for Crenshaw McCray as well. Get some competent quarterback play, at least more competent than it was at Kent State, and I think he can make a really big impact. Obviously, we're going to keep scrolling down here, see if we could find anyone else I want to talk about. If not, we're just going to go through the recent names really quick and then move on to our last segment, which is Real Spiel. So yeah, let's go ahead and go through the latest portals, or the latest portal additions. Obviously, we got a couple names that I want to go over. In particular, Kobe Paysour withdraws his name from the portal. Smart by him. Obviously, you got Belichick coming in, so makes sense for him to withdraw his name. Stribling, we've talked about, of course. Zachariah Poyser. So, obviously, not a lot of people have watched Jacksonville State football, but he was a great safety for Jacksonville State this season. Really a standout guy on their defense. Takes his talents down the South Beach like he's Braun. And look at him now. Obviously a kind of rough Miami secondary. We saw him get burnt all season. Gets truly a ball hawk. I think he had 6 interceptions this year. So Poyser is a great safety, and I think it will definitely make an impact for Miami secondary there. Obviously, this might be a year too late for Miami. We'll see who they can get offensively, but I think that's definitely a step up for Miami's defense there. Obviously, the Branch brothers there. A lot of these transfers are kind of really unimportant, I think. We'll see who. Camden Brown goes to Georgia Southern, so shout out Georgia Southern. 6'3", 200 pounds. So obviously a big body receiver they could throw it to. I really like this move. Being realistic, taking a step down in competition. There's nothing wrong with that, in my opinion. So I like that move for Camden Brown and Georgia Southern. Let's see. Kobe Prentice. Yeah. Honestly, don't really have much else for these names. Let me read through my names I have written down, and we'll go through those really quick. You see a lot of UNC guys who entered the portal instantly took their name out once Bill Belichick took the job there, which I don't blame him. So Isaac Wilson withdraws his name from the portal. Going to have to go into a QB battle with Devin Dampier, and I think Isaac Wilson loses that, to be honest. But yeah, let's keep going. Oh, Clemson's first transfer ever, or not ever, but since the portal. Tristan Smith from Southeast Missouri State. Dabo's doing something down there. So, yeah, Destin Hill. I haven't seen him yet, but Destin Hill, obviously, he transfers from Florida State to LSU, but Destin Hill didn't see the field that much for FSU, and FSU was bad. If you don't see the field at FSU, who's already a transfer portal team made of backups, you're not going to get any PT at LSU. So don't really understand the move there. We're going to switch to this screen here so you can see my beautiful face. But I think Destin Hill is going to be a low-impact move. Let's see. Finley to Tulane. Oh yeah, so we have Josiah Trotter. I talked about him in week 1 of our portal video. Week 1 of the portal, he was honestly a standout linebacker for West Virginia. Led West Virginia in tackles, I believe, or at least was top 3. Great linebacker, going to make an impact on Mizzou, so he's transferred to Missouri. Obviously, Ashton Daniels to Auburn. Oh, Jose Wheeler. So if you don't know who Jose Wheeler is, he's a defensive tackle for Western Kentucky. Really good defensive tackle for Western Kentucky. Goes up to Indiana. Goes with Kirk Cignetti. A very Kurt Cignetti-esque move, and I really like that move for Indiana. Let's see. I think that is all we have to talk about for the portal. Landon Watson to Kentucky. Obviously, I think that's a great move. Dylan Tieneman. So the white safety for Purdue, who I was hyping up like crazy, ends up going to Oregon. So I told you he was going to go to a big team, and he does just that. I wish it was Georgia, but Tiananmen is really good, and he's going to make a big impact on Oregon, and he's going to start over anyone at Oregon. I think that's a given there. But yeah, so we are kind of taking this show slow. I hope you guys don't mind, but we'll do our NFL picks quickly here, and then do real spiel, of course, and keep it going. So NFL picks, obviously. So we went 8-8 last week in the NFL picks. So we're trending up. Obviously we went under 500 last week, or I guess 2 weeks ago. Now we go 8-8. So this one's going to be the one. This is going to get us over the 500 mark. So we're getting back there slowly. So I'm going to go with Denver to get within 3 of LA on Thursday Night Football. I think this game is going to be a shootout, but I think it's going to be close, whatever it is. So give me Denver to get within 3 of LA. Next, we got Kansas City and Houston. I think the only reason why Houston is favored is because they're very good away, and the injury to Mahomes, but Mahomes logged a full practice today, so I think he plays with no issues. Kansas City gets the win like they have somehow all season. Next up, we got Baltimore and Pittsburgh. I picked Pittsburgh last week, and it didn't work out, and it might be a bad look for them. So they go to Baltimore, and I think Baltimore wins by a touchdown. I'm sorry, boys. Sorry to my Steelers fans out there. I know there's a lot of you. Next up, we got the Giants and the Falcons. The Falcons have been playing really bad football. I mean, I'm repping it, but it's been such a hard watch, and I hate it. Especially that game last night. It was awful. Anyways, yeah, I think the Giants can get within 10 of Atlanta, especially if the Raiders could. So, yeah, we'll talk about that later as well. Arizona gets the win by 5 over Carolina. I think that's pretty easy. I think Kyler Murray and the boys get it going. Got to make a late playoff push, so they got to do it somewhere, right? Detroit and Chicago. These teams have already played, and Chicago played a close game, but Chicago got dismantled by Minnesota. Even with the injuries to Detroit, it's more of a system for Detroit, honestly, in my opinion. They're going to pick up guys off the street, and they're somehow going to look good because Dan Campbell is that guy, apparently. So I think Detroit can win by 7 there. Next up, we got Cleveland and Cincinnati. I think Cleveland, with DTR, gets within 7. That might be crazy, but it's another divisional matchup. We'll see how it goes. That one might not turn out very great for me, but we'll see. Next up, Tennessee and Indiana. Both of these teams have kind of been putting it plain, but both of those teams have not been great. And I think it's kind of going to be maybe a defensive game. I don't know. I'm not an Anthony Richardson believer at all, but I think that Tennessee, I honestly think Tennessee could win that game. Next, Rams by 4. Rams house, baby. I think the Rams can take care of the Jets pretty easily. It's just all about stopping those 2 wide receivers, which I think the Rams can do. Next, we got Philadelphia. I think Philadelphia has really gotten back on track. Washington's kind of taken a step back. Philadelphia has looked pretty good the past couple weeks, except in that Carolina game was pretty rough. But I think Philadelphia gets back out there, gets the win by a touchdown. Next up, Minnesota and Seattle. Minnesota has been dominant recently. Dominated the Falcons. They just dominated the Bears. I think they're going to dominate the Seahawks. Seahawks benched Geno Smith last week for some reason. He looks bad. But obviously, whoever Seattle throws in at quarterback, it's not going to be great, especially against a vaulting Minnesota defense. And who's going to cover Jay Jettas and Jordan Addison? Excuse me. Next up, Buffalo, New England. So last week we had a 14.5 point spread, and I picked the Giants to cover that 14.5 point spread against the Ravens, and that did not happen. So I'm not going to let that happen to me twice. I'm not going to get burned twice on a 14.5 point spread. So I'm going with Buffalo to win by 15 points at home against New England. I think that's not going to be surprising if that happens. Next, we got San Fran and Miami. I think Miami wins that by 2. San Fran is a joke right now, almost, and they look pretty rough. Miami needs to do something to save their season. So give me Miami to get the win against San Fran. Next, we got the actual poop bowl. This is the toilet bowl right here. Jacksonville and Las Vegas. This is the tank for Shadur bowl here. I think I think Jacksonville wins. Brian Thomas is really good at football, and so is Tank Bigsby. And I think they outmatch whatever Las Vegas is doing, because I don't know whatever Las Vegas is doing, and it looks awful. Next up, we got Tampa Bay and Dallas. Give me Tampa Bay by 5. Dallas looks pretty rough. Obviously, they got the win last week, but Tampa Bay is a lot better than Carolina, and Tampa Bay also has a lot better weapons that I think a destroyed by injury Dallas defense won't be able to handle. Next, Green Bay and New Orleans. Whoever they start does not look good, whether that's Jake Haener or Spencer Rattler. Give me Green Bay by 14, especially against that Green Bay defense. Next up, I'll kind of do this quick. We're doing something a little bit different for our locks for the week. So obviously, we went 1-2 last week, which is the worst week in podcast history in terms of that. We're 11-6-1 all time. So we're doing a little Thursday night lay, since I wasn't able to obviously do the show on Thursday night. We're doing a little Thursday night lay. So here's our Thursday night lay. We're going to go Justin Herbert over passing yards, Bo Nix under rushing yards. I don't know why it's 18.5. It's pretty rough. I don't see Bo Nix being able to scramble a lot against this the front four at LA. And then we're going to go with Lad McConkey fantasy score. I think he gets that pretty easily. I think he can draw a good matchup in the slot with a slot corner. So give me Lad McConkey over fantasy score there. And that is our Thursday night lock. I'll still post a Sunday locks. I'll probably do it on our new Instagram page at TAAT Pod on Instagram. TAT Pod. Come in, go give it a follow. I'll be posting short form content there and some important updates for the show. So that is that. Next and finally, the last segment. Sorry this episode took so long. We've talked about so much, but that's okay. I love talking to you guys. I'm sure you guys love listening, or at least I hope you do. Why are you watching if you don't? Anyways, so we are going into Real Spiel, which is our Q&A segment. The first thing we're going to talk about is what do you think about Caitlin Clark winning Athlete of the Year? I think for Time Magazine. So I think Caitlin Clark, obviously kind of a pioneer of women's basketball. If you don't believe that, you might be motivated by something outlying. But yeah, I mean Caitlin Clark really, in terms of women's basketball, kind of put women's basketball on the map. Women's basketball, everyone's been aware of it, but no one's really wanted to watch it until Caitlin Clark started playing basketball. I mean, you look at it in college at Iowa, women's basketball, was insane because of her. And you look at it now. You look at the highlights people post, or even these big social media companies like ESPN, like House of Highlights, like Bleacher Report. They're not posting just regular WNBA highlights. They're posting Caitlin Clark highlights. People are going to games because of Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark got these girls on to chartered flights. Like, they don't have to fly commercial anymore because of her. People don't realize that. But obviously it's been a big topic of discussion recently, that Caitlin Clark doesn't deserve it. What has she won? What has she done? But she's done everything for women's basketball, it seems like. She's obviously broke scoring records at Iowa and all of women's college basketball. And she's broken like 250 records as a rookie in the WNBA this year. And she's done so much for the sport beyond basketball. And I don't think without Caitlin Clark, that is all happening. And obviously, I think she, just in terms of impact she's made on that sport, it's way more than what any women's basketball player could have ever done for that sport. And it just sucks that she just so happens to be a different race than the majority of women's basketball. I said it, but that's kind of, I think, the big issue with her winning it. But I don't think it should be an issue at all. If it's a race issue, then you take it up with the system, not with Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark has done so much for the league, for all of WNBA. Why are we hitting the hand that feeds you? makes sense to me. She deserves it. She's done great things for women's basketball. So, you know. Anyways, who's been the most impactful head coaching hire of this recent season in college football? Obviously, I think there's one answer for this, and that is Kirk Cignetti. Getting hired from JMU to go to Indiana, and Indiana was just not really a miserable program last year, but not a great program at all. One of the bottom tier Power 4 programs. Hire Cignetti. Cignetti changes everything about this team, makes it great, brings in Curtis Rourke, brings in his defense, brings in a ton of guys from James Madison, that James Madison defense, and they can hang with the big boys, at least somewhat. Obviously, they didn't in the Ohio State game, but I think they could have a potential to win this game. In terms of impact, I think, Kurt Cignetti, A+ there. CFP mock playoff. I may have to post that later because we're just running so short on time, but I will post that later. So let's move on to chat. Let's move on to the chat questions here. So opinion on Raheem Morris not naming a starter for Sunday. Well, it is Tuesday, so maybe that has a reason, and maybe you want to see, obviously, as a Falcons fan, something's got to happen to Kirk here. 1 touchdown over the last 6 games compared to like 7 picks. Doesn't look great, obviously. And Raheem Morris has came out and said that Kirk is our starter and all this, but obviously we struggled again. And obviously we got the win, but it wasn't a good win. We barely beat a 2-12 team. So, I mean, I think there is a movement to be had there, and we'll see what happens. What would it take for Penix to start? I honestly, at this point, I don't know. Because Raheem has said Kirk is our starter, and obviously monetarily, I mean, it's kind of like the same with the Deshaun Watson situation in a way, in terms of the money. So the Browns spend $200 million in bringing in Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson looks awful, yet they still play him. And I think it's just the liquid assets they haven't invested in that quarterback is the reason why he's playing. And I think that's why Kirk is still probably going to play. And, I would love for Penix to start. I'd love to watch Penix play football. And in the time he's come in, he's looked good. In the preseason, he's looked good. But and I think really that Michael Penix kind of has a good impact. I think he would make it a good impact if he were to start. But we'll just have to see. Obviously, it's going to be interesting with the O-line. Obviously, Kirk Cousins has Jake Matthews to block at left tackle for him, which is, even though he's getting a little old, Jake Matthews has been a great blindside blocker for many years now. Obviously, did it under Matt Ryan. Unfortunately, had to do it for Desmond Ridder, and is doing it now for Kirk Cousins. Still doing a pretty good job despite his age. And then obviously on the other side, at right tackle, you have Caleb McGarry, who has shown some good, but also has shown a lot of bad. So we'll see if maybe they move Jake Matthews to right, or if they keep Caleb McGarry at right to become that new blindside blocker. We'll have to see. It could be a little shaky with McGarry at right tackle. So what would it take for Penix to start? I don't know. We honestly can't tell. I mean, obviously, Kirk has been bad, and Raheem Morris not naming a starter is obviously a step in the right direction. Obviously, we're going to have to see practice. We're going to have to see if Michael Penix takes reps with the ones. He's taken reps with the twos all year. So we'll see if Michael Penix takes any reps with the ones. Yeah. So if there is any more questions, please ask them. We'll stay on for another minute or two. Maybe I can show off my mock a little bit. Let's see here. So, here's the mock. I have to zoom in a little bit here. But we have, obviously I got Texas. Texas versus Arizona State. I have Arizona State getting the upset. It could happen. It really honestly could happen. I think it could. Arizona State has a great offense. Think about a mini Oregon in a way. I think that's Arizona State, with Cam Scadaboo and Sam Levitt being able to throw the ball. I think that Kenny Dillingham could kind of do something crazy here if he really wanted to. Obviously, Ohio State and Oregon. I think Oregon wins again against Ohio State, especially in the Rose Bowl, California. That's a short trip for Oregon. So maybe not a short trip, but it's closer than Ohio. So I think that'll still be a great game, but I think Oregon gets the win. They've been unstoppable all year. Boise State, SMU. I actually picked SMU to get the upset. I think they can really do it. I think that SMU can get the win there. And Penn State, I think it's doable. A lot more doable than people think. Gives a good draw to Boise State, who then has to face off against SMU. I don't think Boise State is going to be able to stop Ashton Jeanty, so I have Boise State winning there. Obviously, Notre Dame, I think, is going to beat Indiana. Gets the draw against Georgia. I think Georgia can beat Notre Dame pretty handedly as well. Gritty team there. Georgia versus Boise State, and then Oregon versus Arizona State. Little different than what the experts may want, but that's what I'm going with. And then obviously I have Oregon beating Arizona State, Georgia beating Boise State, Georgia getting the win. I think that's the most common outcome. I think that's the outcome that's going to happen. So that I'm doing. Oh, we had a little disconnection there. Hopefully everything is okay. I think we're good. But yeah, give me Georgia. So yeah, on that note, we are going to end the episode here. Thank you again for joining. It's always a pleasure. I enjoy doing this week in and week out. So thank you so much for watching, everyone. And yeah, I will see you next Thursday.